If I could choose one word to describe Western civilization, I'd choose convenient. Convenience, though, comes at a cost. We push the cost of our convenience onto our planet.
It's a nice day to talk about an unfashionable subject, recycling, specifically recycling of plastics. We've been conditioned to believe that recycling is a bridge between our convenient lifestyle and a more sustainable world. But I look around this park and I notice that there is a lot of plastic strewn throughout the bush and the waterways. Oh, here's one. Speak of the plastic devil. Yeah, so apparently the world creates about 400 million tonnes each year of single-use plastic. If I look at this waterway, I can already see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Actually, there's probably more. There's at least 7. There's over half a dozen plastic items that have ended up in the waterway here. So of those 400 million tonnes of plastic that we produce each year, half of it ends up in landfill. But where does the rest go? Well, the rest ends up in the environment because only about 9% of plastic worldwide is recycled. Take a look at this. This is a fine example of how nature recycles material, in this case bark and leaf litter falling from the canopy. When nature recycles something, it goes back to nature for nature to reclaim. But as I'll explain shortly with plastics, when we attempt to recycle plastics, the toxic part of that material comes straight back to humans, as well as polluting the environment. I'm actually on my way to a spot where I know a lot of plastic is collected, but I'm actually struggling to get there. But I've found examples here from this riverbed. Well, this is as far as the river comes up, but it's receded at the moment. But I don't have to look too far to find many examples of plastic. Anyway, I was going to talk about recycling because as far back as the 70s and 80s, people were aware that plastic was even becoming a problem back then, and people naturally wanted to do something about it. But, and this is the unpalatable part of our little discussion here, recycling was pushed as a solution, not as a grassroots solution by people fed up with plastic pollution, but it was actually pushed in the 70s and 80s, recycling as a solution by the petrochemical companies, because plastic is basically oil. And so recycling in this context is really a red herring, because those pushing it, the large moneyed interests, petrochemical companies, by making everyone feel better about the problem, suggesting we're going to recycle our way out of it, it actually frees the petrochemical companies to continue making as much plastic as they like.
And if I can just add that I noticed that this is actually a receded riverbed and you couldn't get this plastic out. And to me, that's quite symbolic that plastic is just so embedded in our society and our environment that it's basically like impossible to get out.
Yeah, so look, plastic is now completely entwined in our environment. I mean, literally. So why isn't recycling a solution? I mean, I can hear objectors out there, imaginary objectors, going, well, Tim, we just need to increase the amount of plastic we recycle. But it's not really a solution, because there's a recent white paper from the UK, I'll find a link to it in my show notes, that actually shows that reclaiming plastic or recycling it is actually contributing to plastic pollution, because for plastic to be recycled, it has to be broken down. It has to be shredded by powerful machines that grind the plastic into smaller pieces. And that grinding, and it has to be washed as well. So all those pieces that are ground down into smaller bits of plastic have to be thoroughly washed to remove food and labels and paper. But it's that grinding process which precedes recycling the plastic. It's actually creating microplastics. So microplastics are bits of plastic anywhere from 5 mil down to 1 micron. And microplastic is a terrible type of pollution because it's so small, it's actually entering our bloodstream. It's not only our physical environment, our parks and waterways that are teeming with plastic. Now, because of microplastics, our human bodies are teeming with this stuff. So plastic that small, down to 1 micron, 5 mil down to 1 micron, actually smaller parts than 1 micron actually makes it nanoplastic. I don't know about that, but it follows that if our bodies are teeming with microplastics, they're probably teeming with nanoplastics, and they get into the bloodstream, they get into the testes, they're in sperm, they're in breast milk, placenta, our brains, and apparently microplastics are also an endocrine disruptor. So a side effect of that is human fertility. Okay, people in the West are already having less children, but fertility is dropping because of the disruption caused by microplastics. I mean, full disclosure, my balls are probably filled with microplastic, not by choice. So if recycling is actually increasing the amount of microplastic from grinding it up, it's certainly not a solution. That white paper I referenced from the UK, the scientists who put that together analysed water runoff from a plastic reclamation facility, and even with a filter on the water that was ejected out of the facility, it was almost 1,400 tonnes per year of microplastic in the water. So imagine the facilities that don't even have filters, the amount of microplastic being injected from them after all those plastic particles are washed. And disturbingly enough, some of those facilities sell their water to water treatment plants who then turn it into sludge for fertiliser. So we've got microplastic infused sludge, which is a result from plastic recycling, that is also given to farmers, the agricultural industry, to put on their fields. So we're literally, in an attempt to recycle this stuff, we're grinding it up and then we're growing our food in it, because that sludge is sold as fertiliser to the agricultural industry. So if recycling is contributing to the microplastic problem, what's the solution? Well, perhaps we just use less plastic. Except that's not really feasible, because we've built our whole civilization on it, and two industries in particular are highly dependent on it. Healthcare is filled with products and items that are wrapped in single-use plastic. We can't just solve that overnight. Oh, and agriculture too. Bags of fertiliser, agricultural products come in single-use plastic as well.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
So when I was doing my research, the agriculture issue was more that there was like fertiliser, and they used plastic to cover the soil to keep the moisture in, and so the bags would decompose. But you were quoting that paper to me, and you were saying that the sludge, they actually use that as a fertiliser and to grow their produce, which I just thought was astounding. Would you like to tell me a bit more about that?
Yeah, so runoff, or the end product from water treatment facilities, in the interest of recycling, is given to agriculture because it makes good fertiliser, particularly if the water's been reclaimed. But the problem is, microplastics are so prevalent, they're now in that reclaimed water that is being used for agriculture. So we're literally putting microplastics on our agricultural field.
So I wonder what that is doing to the produce. We eat a lot of fresh produce thinking we're doing the right thing, but I wonder if those toxic chemicals are actually being absorbed into our lettuce and our broccoli, as well as pesticides being sprayed on the top of it.
Yeah, I think that's a given. Oh, there's a couple of bottles up here. So at the start of this video, I said only about 9% of plastic is recycled worldwide. I mean, 9% of 400 million metric tonnes a year, that's nothing. But to increase that figure just means we're going to increase the amount of these tiny plastic particles. Oh, there's a piece there. In the environment. So the idea of recycling is to actually reuse an item. Whoa. Huh. This is the most dangerous part of the video. Success. If we are going to reuse plastic, there is actually another option, which doesn't involve shredding it and turning it into microplastics. Here's an example of plastic breaking down. So this hasn't made it to the recycler or the landfill, but UV rays, water, temperature change, it is eventually going to degrade, but it's not biodegradable because as the particles get smaller, it's just distributing the toxic effect of plastic over a much wider area, whether that be the waterways, the soil, even air. So that white paper I referenced, the scientists who put that research together in the UK also measured the air in the plastic recycling facility, and the air was filled with microparticles. So we're also breathing this in. So if the idea behind recycling is to reuse plastic, is there another way we can reuse it? Well, there is. Oh, before I get to that, there's more of the stuff. It's everywhere. Oh, look at all this. Oh, a bit of alfoil. Oh, what do we have here? Oh, isn't this ironic? No, not the Alanis Morissette song. You might remember a few years ago, we were so panicked about the Karonka, we went on a bender with these things. Turns out they're filled with plastic as well. So, have we really made the world a safer place? A glove. I was talking about the medical industry, a big user of single-use plastics. Just because that's a difficult problem to solve doesn't mean the refuse from healthcare doesn't end up in our parks and waterways. Yes, difficult problem to solve, but examples here of not so difficult problems to solve. Balloons. Balloons are really crap. I mean, they're fun at the time, but look where they end up. Animal could swallow that. Party bag. Kids love to have parties, but do they need their sweets and lollies in single-use plastic bags? Surely they could be in something else. Another one. This is a good sign. It reminds me of the recycling symbol. We think plastic, when we recycle it, is going in a certain direction, but what we're not told is it's actually coming back to us in the form of microplastic pollution into our bloodstream, into our airways, into our waterways, into our parks. So as consumers, it's a terrible word, but we are consuming. We need to be more analytical and more critical about not just our own choices, but the claims corporations make about plastic being recycled. Remember, 400 million metric tonnes of plastic produced every year, only 9% is ever recycled. Yeah, so trying to change society's attitude to plastic and wanting everyone to use less of it, that's difficult. That's effectively like standing on the beach, looking at the water coming in, putting our hand out and ordering the tide to stop coming in. It's just not possible. And even if some of us manage to use a lot less of it, what about the sheer volume of plastic waste already in the environment? We need to do something about this. I mean, this box was just from a small area in my local park. I mean, I could probably fill a tip truck with this stuff if I had access to one. Yeah, so check out this hole. Clearly, plastic recycling is not doing the job. I mean, water in plastic bottles, whoever the marketer was that came up with that idea, I'm sure they did well out of it. My wife, who was kindly filming this for me, actually said regarding plastic recycling that recycling plastic, that is the plastic that actually gets to the recycling facility, it's effectively just stopping for a coffee on its way to landfill or somewhere else. The humble takeaway coffee cup. This is a good example of what I would call greenwash. This has a message on the back of it, sipping our way to a more sustainable future, which really, that's a load of BS, because if you read the fine print here, it's encouraging the purchaser of the coffee to return the coffee to a participating 7-Eleven store, which is a service station slash grocery store. So this is where they've bought the coffee from. But how many people buy a coffee from 7-Eleven and then stay there to drink the coffee? No, they get it to go. So if they get it to go, are they really going to store the empty cup somewhere and return it to the 7-Eleven? And as the fine print on this cup says, it's only participating stores. So it's little messages like this that make us think, well, everything's okay. People are recycling things, there's programs in place. But as I said, it's only 9% of the 400 metric tonnes of plastic waste that is recycled each year.
And if I can just have some of my own thoughts here too, it says, talking about environmental protection, so they're giving single-use cups with what feels like a plastic lid and using the word environmental protection. And it also says paper cups with lining made from plants. Now, for my research, you can make plastic from plants, but then it's just plastic, and the pollution and the toxins are the same as if it's made from petrochemicals. So having a lining made from plants doesn't mean the lining is actually biodegradable and natural. It could just be plastic. And so that can complicate the recycling, and that can also be misleading marketing as well. I'd be interested to find that out.
Yeah, that's a good point, not to mention the fact that you're putting scalding hot liquid onto a plastic surface, which is the lining of the cup, and
Absolutely.
all the nasties from the plastic compound would be leaching into your drink. And back to the issue with recycling, it's just over 3,000 plastic recycling facilities around the globe, which isn't that much when you look at the world's population, but it's estimated just the recycling process of recycling the plastic could be contributing to 2 million metric tonnes of microplastic each year. So what's the solution? Well, this is the part of the video where I'm going to get yelled at. One of the perils of filming in a public place, we just had some mountain bike riders interrupt my monologue sitting on the log.
A log.
A log. Yeah, so to increase the amount of plastic that is recycled, it's not feasible. It's going to create more microplastic pollution. But the idea of recycling is to reuse the plastic. But when plastic is recycled, it generally can only be recycled once anyway before it degrades too much for new products. So plastic is essentially oil, and this is a controversial thing. We could reuse it just by burning all the stuff. Now, I'm sensing, just like Obi-Wan Kenobi in Star Wars, when the planet Alderaan exploded and he sensed a great disturbance in the Force, I'm sensing mass objection out there in cyberspace on this. I don't like the idea of burning plastic either, but here is a little exercise. If we're burning coal, developing nations are burning coal. They're industrialising, they're burning coal. Is it better to then dig up the coal out of the ground, ship it to the developing nations for them to burn it for power generation, or is it more sensible to take this enormous plastic problem and burn the plastic, because it is essentially an energy source. It is essentially oil.
I have to interrupt. If I'm filming this, I have to provide an opinion on this. I think it would be fair to say that we would have to do the equal amount of research on the pollution created by burning it before promoting it, because there's so much research done on microplastics and what happens to plastic when it breaks down, and I think we would have to do the equivalent amount of research on what waste incineration to energy creates.
Yes, that is a good point, but just putting plastic in landfill is actually creating a situation where methane is off-gassing from the landfill.
That's true.
And landfill does contribute to greenhouse gases.
That's true.
So when I think that microplastics and now nanoplastics, which are smaller than 1 micron, I mean nanoplastics you can breathe in from the air, I think the threat of microplastics and nanoplastics to the biosphere, to our body chemistry, our ability to lead healthy lives, to reproduce, avoiding new types of cancers, I think that is more of a pressing issue than greenhouse gases.
How do we know that burning it isn't going to cause cancers?
These are excellent questions, but considering we're poisoning ourselves and recycling's not the answer,
Which form of poison's better?
which form of poison's better? So perhaps it is better to burn the plastic. Clearly the best thing to do is to use less of this crap. I mean, we really don't need to buy coffee in these disposable cups. Yes, you might think these are actually biodegradable, but they're not, because the cardboard cup, the paper cup, actually has a plastic lining.
Again.
There goes the next generation on their bike. I love to ride my bike here. Speaking of the next generation, we need to sort this out for them, because we're just kicking this plastic bottle down the road for someone else to deal with. Until recently, we were actually exporting our plastic waste to China, where they were going to do something with it. But they actually stopped accepting our plastic waste in 2018. So effectively, they've made it our responsibility, as it should be. So Australia and other countries who are exporting to China, we need to take responsibility for all this crap. But have we? No. What we're doing now is we're just exporting it to other countries who claim they'll do something with it. And now Southeast Asia is being filled with all our plastic crap as well, and it's just ending up in landfill or warehouses there. So we've just passed the problem on to someone else. Yes, by all means we need to use less, but we do need to come up with a solution to get rid of all this plastic trash, and we need to do it fast.